basically. It was the same thing every Wednesday. Okay, now on the Israelites could crave the meat, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic of Egypt. Who will give us meat to eat? We remember the fish that we ate freely in Egypt, the cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. But now our whole being is dried up. There is nothing at all except this manna before our eyes. And I get an impression here when he says there's not except this manna, as if it's downgrading it. This manna, they're downgrading the cake, so to speak.
Every day the same.
Every day the same, right? This manna, suffering.
Taste like garlic,
Yeah.
onion, nothing. It was
Nobody
completely
is you.
Yeah. Now they had been in God's manna more than a year, yet they felt restless.
Angels.
I'm sorry?
But that is the food of the angels.
Yeah. Yeah, this is that first year though. See, they haven't got to Canaan yet. This is that first year. They felt restless and wanted something else. Even Moses was affected. Trying to lead a group of restless people is not easy. But Moses knew whom to turn to. Why have you afflicted your servant? And why have I not found favor in your sight that you have laid the burden of all these people to me? Moses was
Not only the people complaining, but also Moses.
Yeah, Moses was getting this because they're complaining to Moses. You know, sometimes when you get something delivered to your door or you go to the store and something isn't right, and who do you complain to? You complain to the poor checker or the person who's delivering it, you know? And they had nothing to do with that, but that's the one that gets the complaint. Moses was getting the complaint. Everybody was coming to him to complain about it, what was going on. Okay, now in Numbers chapter 11, 16 through 33. So the Lord said to Moses, gather to me 70 men of the elders of Israel, whom you know to be elders of the people, and officers over them. Bring them to the tabernacle of meeting, that they may stand there with you. Then I will come down and talk with you there. I will take of the Spirit that is upon you, and will put the same upon them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, that you may not bear it yourself. Then you shall say to the people, consecrate yourself for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was well with us in Egypt. Therefore the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall eat not 1 day, not 2 days, not 5 days, nor 10 days, nor 20 days, but for a whole month, until it comes out of your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you. Because you have despised the Lord who is among you, and have wept before him, saying, why did we ever come out of Egypt? And Moses said, the people whom I am among are 600,000 men on foot, yet you have said, I will give them meat, that they may eat for a whole month. Shall the flocks and herds be slaughtered for them to provide enough for them? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them to provide enough for them? Then verse 23, and the Lord said to Moses, has the Lord's arm been shortened? Now you shall see whether what I say will happen to you or not. So Moses went out and told the people. I'm skipping down a little bit here. And we come down to, they got 70 people for the different ones to complain to. Now down to 31, it said, now a wind came out from the Lord, and it brought quail from the sea, and left them fluttering near the camp, about a day's journey on this side, and about a day's journey on the other side, all around the camp, and about 2 cubits above the surface of the ground. Verse 32, and the people stayed up all that day, all night, and all the next day, and gathered the quail. Who had gathered least gathered 10 homers. Now, I'm not exactly sure how much a homer is, but I did hear one as I was studying this lesson, hearing another class, and they said a homer was 10 bushels, if I'm not mistaken. Huh? Well, I would guess it's we talk about a bushel, so it seems like a lot of quail. And they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. But while the meat was still between their teeth, before it was chewed, the wrath of the Lord was aroused against the people, and the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. Yes?
If I was just thinking about parents and children relationship. How about if your children is asking for food, will you give him something that that will give them always every day? Do you think it's right?
Well,
Children will ask some food. Is it right that you will give them only the same food every day?
no, you wouldn't. No.
We should have balance. So I was thinking, why did God give them also that meant that it was the cause of their death? If God is love, why don't He give him something better than that?
Well, of course, when he gave the manna was able to be fixed in all kinds of different ways.
I was thinking about the meat of the quail.
Oh, the quail, okay.
Why give them so much? Why not give them different kinds of food? Why only quail and then they vomited and then they die? If you are a parent, you will not give your children something that will cause them stomach ache and they die. That's my question.
Okay, but here's the thing. The Lord put the quail there,
Yeah.
but they went out and gathered it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, as a parent, you're going to put the food in front of your children to eat. You're not going to put so much there that they would get sick. The Lord didn't do that. The Lord put the quail there.
Yeah.
They went out and they got more than they should have gotten.
Mm-hmm.
They just took too much and gorged themselves and so forth. Yes. That may be too. As far as the disease is concerned, I wanted to talk a little bit about that. See, I don't feel that the Lord gave them the disease because of this. Where it says there, in what verse was that in? Where they got sick. That the Lord struck the people with a very great plague. My idea of this, from my study over the years, is the Lord doesn't give plagues like that. It's we. For instance, let me say, give an example. If you're smoking cigarettes, you're going to get lung cancer. Eventually, you're going to get lung cancer. Does the Lord give you lung cancer because you're smoking cigarettes? Or do you get lung cancer because you're smoking cigarettes? See what I'm saying? And my thinking is they made gluttons of themselves by eating this quail, and maybe eating it raw. That could very well be too. And consequently, they got sick. I don't think the Lord made them sick. I think from gluttony on this quail, that made them sick. They ate too much, that's for sure. Yeah, the Lord put it out there, but they had to go get it. When you, for instance, when you get, like you were talking about, you're a parent for the child, you may put out the little food, but you don't leave it out. But if the child goes into the refrigerator and starts gorging himself with other things, that's not the parent doing it, that's the child doing it. Yeah, he gorged himself too much, that's for sure. Now here we have the question I have at the bottom of page, in the lesson here it says, why is it so easy to remember the past as better than it really was? They were slaves. And yet, how much better we had. We had all this cucumbers and leeks and on and on and on. Let's go back to Egypt.
We don't trust the Lord.
Right.
We think today is today and tomorrow we see what happened. We remember what happened yesterday, but we say maybe God is going to forgotten about me and He's not going to give me anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we try to eat as much as.
Yeah, but also, why do we usually think of the past as better than what it is today? You know, back in the old days, it was such and such, and so back in the old days, this and that and the other thing. When I can remember, I moved out here to California, and then I went back to Michigan. It must have been 10 or 15 years later. And here was I went to the neighborhood where I grew up, the high school. I went to the high school. The high school was still there, but they weren't using it as a high school. It was being used, the city was using it for something else. They had built a new high school. In the area where I grew up, at Willow Run Village, was a village that was built during the Second World War for the people who worked at the bomber plant in Willow Run, building B-24s. Anyway, I grew up in that complex, and I remember how great it was and how wonderful it was. When I went back 15, 20 years later, of course, all that was gone. And I got to thinking, well, the distances weren't all this. I remember walking miles to carry coal oil to the coal oil plant. I can remember it wasn't that far, you know. Yeah, I was small, I was young, but to me it was, you know, but you remember things like that. And here, that's what it says. Why is it so easy to remember the past as better than what it really was? It's so easy for us to always look back and look at that. Okay, moving on. We forget, yeah. We think, it was so much better. A lot of times we say, oh, the good old days. Oh, things were so much better in the good old days. Well, maybe it wasn't so much better in the good old days. For instance, well, one of the things I can attest to, when I was a kid growing up, we didn't have a car. There was no car. My dad he took a bus when I went to high school in town, 3 miles away. I took the city bus to go into town to go to school, city bus to come back, and so on and so on. We didn't have a car. Eventually, when I turned 16, 17, then I talked my parents into buying a car. Well, we bought a car. But nobody had garages that there where we lived. It was, you know, and everybody, one car was enough. My next door neighbor has 6 cars. It's a husband and wife, and they got 4 daughters. They got 6 cars parked, and they don't even use the garage, which is a 2-car garage. Across the street, same thing. You know, now we're so affluent and have so much. And we look at the good old days and say, oh, those were the good old days. Well, I think we tend to forget. Anyway, moving on. Monday, contagious. Dissension of Aaron and Miriam. Okay, well, if somebody will read Numbers chapter 12, 1 to 3.
And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses, saying, because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. He had married an Ethiopian woman, and they said, hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses, hath not spoken also by us, and the Lord heard it?
Amen.
Now the man Moses was very meek, and above all men which were upon the face of the earth.
Okay. What were Miriam and Moses upset about?
Did not Moses remember that they are not allowed to marry not Egyptian, not Israelites?
Well, she wasn't a, no,
They were admonished not to marry other nation.
well, Mary have to understand who she was. She was the daughter of, I forget his name, Jethro, I think his name was.
I think the issue wasn't so much the marriage, but it was the fact that they wanted to have some of the accolades of being, you know, a prophet.
Yeah.
Because that's what they said afterwards. Doesn't God speak through us too? And apparently, I think the lesson talks about the fact that this happened after the 70 elders were summoned, or, you know, put in position. So now it wasn't just Moses and them, it was Moses and 70 plus them. And then now they no longer have that position of leadership.
Right. Yeah. Well, of course, they still had position of leadership because Aaron was a high priest.
Right.
So they still had the position of ownership and of leadership, but that was the real reason. It wasn't because she was an Ethiopian. That wasn't the reason at all. And she was a follower of the Lord. She followed the Lord because she was the daughter of a high priest. So she was a member of the church. Now she may not have been Egyptian or Israelite. She may not have been an Israelite, but she was a follower of the Lord. So, but they were using this as an excuse, and of course, as Doctor said here, that's exactly what the problem was. Yes.
And she also was descendant of Abraham.
Right. She was a descendant of Abraham.
But they didn't care about it. They
Yeah.
wanted to say something.
Yeah. They just had to have an excuse to say that.
It shows an underlying racism in there. Right?
Well, there may have been some of that
Even
as
though
well.
the reason wasn't that, it showed there was a little racism.
Yeah.
It
Oh.
used to happen here in California, the same thing. When I, back in the 60s, I started going to church 7 day. And if you were single, you sit over there. If you were Mexican from Mexico, you sit way over there. If you were Mexican born in this country, then you sit over here. I only went one time and left the church.
Oh, really? Oh.
Almost 20 years
Oh.
because so much details that I didn't want to put up with.
Yeah, and this is a problem that I think we need to all think about. One of the things, it really disturbs me when something like this happens, but when someone says, I left the church because brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so did this and that, and so I don't want nothing to do with the church. We have to understand, each one of us, that are we following brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so, or are we following the Lord? And I think that's very important. I understand. I understand that. But I think we still need to make sure that we're following the Lord and not following brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so. Because we're all sinners, all of us. And we all do things that we all rub each other the wrong way, one or the other, and consequently. But we can't let that get in the way of our salvation. We just can't. We just can't. I know. I understand. I know where you're coming from. I understand. But all of us. I mean, I try to do that too. Make sure I follow in the Lord, not what brother so and so or sister so and so said. Because there's been times.
In some other places, some other churches, if you don't have a brand new car, they don't shake hands with you.
Oh, I never heard that. Not that bad.
And I've been all over many different countries, states.
Yeah. I can remember back as a young man with the Pathfinder Club. I'd only been in the church a few years, and I'm in charge of the Pathfinders, and it seems as if every week the powers to be in the church would get after me because we didn't clean up the kitchen right on our Pathfinder, but we never even used the kitchen, and something was always wrong, and the Pathfinders got blamed for it, and of course I was the one they came to, and so on and so forth. But I guess I was enjoying myself with the Pathfinders more, and I didn't try not to let that bother me. But anyway, that we need to focus on Christ is what we need to do. Okay. Have to move along here because we're run out of time. Okay, how did God respond to this? Numbers 12, 4 through 13. It says, Suddenly the Lord said to Moses, Aaron, and Miriam, Come out, you three, to the tabernacle of meeting. So the three came out. Then the Lord came down in a pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both went forward. Then he said, Now, hear now my words. If there is a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known to him in a vision. I speak to him in a dream. Not so with Moses. He is faithful in all my house. I speak with him face to face.
Anyways, in some parts of the Bible says that no one has seen the Father or God. And it's the statement that says that God talk with him personally.
Yeah, he talked to him personally, that's right. Even plainly and not in dark sayings, and he sees the forms of the Lord. Remember, they put him in the cleft there, and the Lord passed by to see his backside. Why, when we are not afraid to speak against, why then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? So the anger of the Lord was aroused against them.
Only see this palm, but not the face of God.
Yeah, he didn't see his face. He just saw his backside. He just passed through him. I imagine it was kind of veiled even at that, because the glory of the Lord would have died. Right. Then the cloud departed, and Miriam in verse 10 became leprous, and Aaron turned to Miriam, and she was a leper. Verse 11, so Aaron said to Moses, "Oh my Lord, please do not lay this sin on us." Verse 12, please do not let her be as one dead, whose flesh is half consumed when he comes out of his mother's womb. So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, "Please heal her. Oh God, I pray, heal her." What was God's response? He rebuked him, but he healed her. He healed her. God's response was immediate and leaves no room for interpretation. The prophetic gift is not a weapon to be used to wield more power. Moses was well suited for leadership because he had learned how extremely dependent he was on God. Now, there's a little quotation at the bottom here of your lesson. And I think we need to think this and put it in our hearts and think about it. Yes?
The volume, basically, so that we can all get the essence of what you're saying. It's impossible right now to hear you clearly.
The problem we're having is the class in the back. If we increase the volume, this volume isn't even being spread in here. It's only on live streaming.
Maybe we should have the Spanish class somewhere else, or we should go somewhere else, so we can talk like normal people.
Yeah, because personally I would like that because I would like to use this. I'd like to put some of these things up on the board here rather than read them. I'd like to have them. But anyway, that's what the board will have to decide, and you'll have to talk to the board about that. This is what we decided to do for this first month, if I remember right. This is what we've decided to do. And I'm sorry. That's why I encourage people to please come down front, because then when we break up, you can always go back to your class to where you want to sit, but you could come down front. It would help. Yeah. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. But we don't want to disturb the Spanish class back there. Well, there is another class out there. There is a class out there now. Anyway, this last phrase on the bottom, I would like to really emphasize this. Though it's always easy to be critical of church leadership at any level, how much better would our church and our own spiritual life be if instead of complaining, we would intercede in behalf of our leaders, even when we disagree with them. We need to intercede with them. Our pastors, our elders, our poor Don, he gets a lot of harassment from me, and you. Is that what you're saying, or you just no? You're something to say.
So on this note, about complaining, right, of a leader, right? So we have Aaron and Miriam complaining about Moses, who was as close to perfection as a human being could have been. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but he was a solid follower of God, right?
Right.
To contrast that with David and Saul, where David had every reason to complain about Saul, right? And yet he was faithful to the point where he could have killed him twice, and he felt guilty about that twice. And so we see the contrast between how we should deal with the leadership of the church, even though we may not agree. I mean, think about David and Saul. I mean, if I have a pastor or a leader in the church that behaves like Saul, I should still be like David,
Yeah.
right?
Amen.
And that's what God expects from me.
Amen.
I should still be like David and respect the position of leadership
Yeah.
and let God handle and deal with the problems and the issues.
This goes back to our earlier discussion where we can't look at brother so-and-so or sister so-and-so in the church. We have to focus on Christ and on God. And pray for that person. If they've sinned against us or something else, and we don't think they're doing right in the church, whatever the case may be, we need to pray for them. And if the Lord wants to change it, this is his church. He'll change it. Maybe in his time, he'll change it. So I think we need to think about that. Okay, I want to move along now to Tuesdays. Restless leads to rebellion. We got 10 spies here. Okay? Numbers 13, verses 27 to 33. They say, "Then they told him and said, we went to the land where you sent us. It truly flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit. Nevertheless, the people who dwell in the land are strong. The cities are fortified and very large. Moreover, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Anakites dwell in the land of the south. The Hittites and Jebusites and the Ammonites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea along the banks of the Jordan." Then Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, "Let us go up at once and take possession, for we are able to take it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We are not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we." And they give the children of Israel a bad report of the land which they had spied out, saying, "The land through which we have gone as spies is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people whom we saw in it are men of great stature. There we saw the giants, the descendants of Anak came from the giants, and we were like grasshoppers in their sight. And so we were in their sight." Bad report. After they've been through this, passing through the Red Sea, after the manna's come down and fed them, they had all the quail they could possibly eat, and they were afraid. They were afraid. In spite of Caleb's intervention, the voices and doubters of the skeptics prevailed. The Israelites did not set out to conquer what God had promised them. Restless at heart, they chose weeping and murmuring over marching and shouting for victory. Okay. Numbers 14, 1 to 10. So all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and the people wept that night. I'm going to skip on down here to they wanted to rebel. They wanted to stone Caleb and Joshua, and the Lord stopped them. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will these people," I'm moving on to Wednesday's lesson. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will these people reject me? How long will they not believe me with all the signs that I have performed among them? I will strike them with the pestilence and disinherit them, and I will make of you a nation greater and mightier than they." And I've interpreted the interceder. I put down here, God offered Moses to be the father of the nation. Would God have really done this? What do you think? Would God have really done this? Wiped out all the Israelites and put Moses there and made a great nation of Moses? Would he have done this? Moses stepped in then in 13 through 9, Numbers 14, 13 through 19. And Moses said to the Lord, "Then the Egyptians will hear it, for by your might you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell it to all the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, Lord, are among these people, that you, Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands above them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and a pillar of fire by night. Now, if you kill these people as one man, then the nations which have heard of your fame will speak, saying, because the Lord was not able to bring this people to the land which he swore to give them, therefore he killed them in the wilderness. And now I pray, let the power of my Lord be great, just as you have spoken, saying, the Lord is long-suffering and abundant in mercy, forgiving iniquity and transgression, but he will by no means clear as the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers of the children to the third and fourth generation. Pardon the iniquity of this people, I pray, according to your greatness of your mercy, as you have forgiven this people from Egypt, even until now. Remember our memory verse. What was our memory verse? Now these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the age had come. Can we learn a lesson from this? Always complaining to the Lord. I've moved on to Thursday lessons because I'm supposed to finish in just 5 minutes, so I need to move it on. Now these have another example. To the extent, this is, no, move on here. Then Moses, this is Numbers 14, 39 to 45. Then Moses told these words to all the children of Israel, and the people mourned greatly. And they arose early in the morning and went up to the top of the mountain, saying, here we are, and we will go up to the place which the Lord has promised, for we have sinned. What are they doing? What are the children of Israel doing?
Complaining, rebelling.
Well, yeah, but they've done that. And now they've come back. What did they do next? The presumption. They decided that, well, we're going to go. The Lord said we're going to take it, so we're going to go in and take it. So they went up into the land, but they presumed to go to the mountain. Nevertheless, neither the ark of the covenant of the Lord nor Moses departed from the camp. Then the Amalekites and the Canaanites who dwell on the mountain came down and attacked them. And they lost, of course. Their presumption. They were going to...
There's a text in the Bible which encourages people to presumption. The verse that says, God will forgive all your sins, though your sins be as scarlet, red like crimson, they shall be forgiven. And that is that some people use that verb and so they presume that even they do something that is sinful, they will always cling to the promise that God will forgive them. And that's presumption.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
My theory on that is that he was not going to kill the Israelites. He wasn't going to do that. My thinking is he was showing the worlds, not us as well, but the worlds, all the different worlds, all the different creation, the angels and everybody, just how Moses was ready to give his life for the people. He said, blot me out. Moses said, blot me out, but don't do this. Don't do this. Please don't do this. Forgive them their sin. He was showing all the areas of creation, how Moses was faithful and how his people could be faithful. He wasn't going to blot them out. I have a commentary to read here. I have a few minutes. There's a fascinating story about a devout king who was disturbed by the ingratitude of his royal court. He prepared a large banquet for them. When the king and his royal guests were seated, a beggar shuffled into the hall, sat down at the king's table, and gorged himself with food. Without saying a word, he then left the room. The guests were furious and asked permission to seize the tramp and tear him from limb to limb. The king replied, the beggar has done only once to an earthly king that which you that each of you does 3 times each day to God. You sit here at the table and eat until you are satisfied. Then you walk away without recognizing God or expressing one word of thanks to him. This was precisely Israel's problem, ingratitude. It is at the very heart of this week's lesson, restless and rebellious, when we forget that God has done for us in the past, and doing for us in the present, and will do for us in the future. The natural result is discontent. In a remarkable statement, Ellen White speaks directly to the problems of forgetting the blessings of God in our lives. And this is what she writes in Patriarchs and Prophets, page 293. They forgot their bitter service in Egypt. They forgot the goodness and power of God displayed on their behalf in their deliverance from bondage. They forgot how their children had been spared when the destroying angels slew all the firstborn of Egypt. They forgot the grand exposition of divine power at the Red Sea. They forgot that while they had crossed safely in the path that had been opened for them, the armies of their enemies attempting to follow them had been overwhelmed by the waters of the sea. They saw and felt only their present inconveniences and trials. And instead of saying, God has done great things for us, whereas we were slaves, he is making of us a great nation. They talked of the hardness of the way and wondered when their weary pilgrimage would end. Patriarchs and Prophets, page 293. We need to think about that and remember our memory verse. All of these lessons that we have today and throughout the Bible, the Old Testament, is for us to remember and to look at and say, let's make sure we follow the Lord. Let's have a word of prayer before we break up. Father in heaven, we thank you so much for this lesson. We thank you so much for the lessons that we've got from the children of Israel and from the book of Numbers, Lord. I ask, Lord, that each one of us will put these lessons into our hearts and help us to understand just what you would have for us and to follow you and only you. In Jesus' name, amen.